Now, this is a story all about how the best laid plans can go to crap. So, if you'd like to take a seat and just sit right there, I'll tell you all about this review that went horribly awry. My name is Mr. MegaManFan, and I tried to review Champion Wrestler today. This is a PC Engine game that I imported and was planning to do a more in depth investigation of, but my cat Tango had other ideas. I got partway through it. I managed to get the wrapping paper off of it and the elastic band that was holding the paper to it. And I managed to investigate the inner contents. And while I was doing that, I looked up some information. And you know where I usually go when it's the PC Engine files? I go to the PC Engine Software Bible, because they seem to have a record of every game ever released for the PC Engine, or damn close. And this is what they had to say about Champion Wrestler. Take it to the ring with one of 8 characters. Push, kick, rebound, trample your opponent in this muscle-bound wrestling title from Taito. That's it. That's all they had to say. You know what else? They've never reviewed it either. It's called Unreviewed on their page. So I've got to assume that they know of its existence and went no further than that. And since it's not a Fire Pro Wrestling game, I'm not sure I would blame them. And from what little I played of the game, I don't know that I can recommend anybody else do differently. But I didn't get much of a chance because my cat, who you may have heard crying in the background already, Tango, well, he had other ideas. And at first, I was okay with that because, you know what? I would rather pet Tango than review a mediocre PC Engine wrestling game, even if I am a big pro wrestling fan. So he wants to jump in my lap instead of letting me investigate this game and try to decipher the Japanese language manual. That's fine. It just seemed to have each character and a list of their attributes or moves. Probably pretty typical for any fighting game, let alone a pro wrestling game, but I was hoping to glean some sort of insight into the controls, like how you would do your grappling moves, how you would lock up, how you would execute a suplex, how you'd throw somebody out of the ring, how you'd punch, how you'd kick. But again, Tango just wanted to be cute and flex his paws. So fine, I'll pause for his paws. And we'll do that for a little while, but eventually he got bored of it and said, "No, Daddy, I want to go investigate the basement and you can do your own thing." So I said, fine, if you're done, I'm done too. I will set up the tripod and we will record some game footage. But the moment I set it up, he decided it was time to push it over. And even now, he's making a fuss as I explain what he did. I'm not mad at you, Tango, but just watch. Jesus, Tango. Yeah, that's what happens when your cat decides to rub his face all over the tripod. So, had to regroup, put everything back where it was, finally get started, and here we have Champion Wrestler from Taito. And most of these characters seem like they're parodies of US pro wrestlers, like R. Garner. That strikes me as being Ronnie Garvin. And there's one named Big Giant. I'm going to assume that's probably supposed to be like the Ultimate Warrior or Hulk Hogan. It's not Andre the Giant because he's not broad enough for that. I was kind of curious when I saw there were high scores. I thought maybe there'd be a point system. You'd get an award for doing different types of moves. But no, actually, that high score table is the prize money you get for winning or losing a match. So you don't get points during the matches. You just have to straight up win the matches. I tried, but my inability to figure out how to execute most of the moves just really hampered my ability to enjoy this game. I could occasionally lock up with my opponent, but once I did, no matter what I hit, the 1 or the 2, any combination of 1 and 2 together, with the D-pad or without the D-pad, I couldn't transition from locking up to actually doing a power move. I couldn't suplex. I couldn't German suplex. I couldn't arm drag. Nothing. No, man. Some games make it so easy to do moves, and some games make it so hard. I think the only thing I successfully did in this pro wrestling game was get back in the ring when I got thrown out. I couldn't even get down running the ropes or climbing to the top turnbuckle to do a flying body press or an axe handle or just anything. I think without somebody that's actually played this game before, which PC Engine Software Bible clearly hasn't, and somebody who's written down what all the button combos are to do the grappling moves, I'm pretty much stuck on this one. With Fire Pro games, I can usually pick it up even without an English translation. It just sort of works after a while because Fire Pro wrestling games are pretty well made. Most of them anyway. And this, not a chance. I don't even know that it's necessarily a bad game, but it doesn't seem like it's a beloved game given how little information there is about it outside of Japan. And I suppose I shouldn't complain given that, PC Engine got a lot more wrestling games than we did in North America on the TurboGrafx 16, so I should be grateful for any pro wrestling game that exists on this platform, but I just want more intuitive controls. I just want to hit one button to lock up and another button when I'm locked up with somebody to hit a move. And if they're doing a move to me, I want one button to counter the move and get out of it, or another button to try to reverse the move. Is that too much to ask? Is it too much to ask that I can just grab a wrestler, take him down to the mat, and put him in a Boston Crab? Why should that be so hard? Why should it be so hard to run the ropes and hit somebody with a shoulder tackle? These are basic, easy things to do that any pro wrestler in any pro wrestling match can lay out between them and their opponent. Nope, no such luck with Champion Wrestler. Look, I'm not saying this is a bad game. I'm just saying everything here went horribly awry. I couldn't fully review the manual because Tingo wanted to hang out. My setup got knocked over because he decided to rub his face on the tripod. I'm not mad at him or anything. I honestly think I probably wasn't going to get much further in this game with or without anything that he did. So that's Champion Wrestler for PC Engine. I got it for a couple bucks. I don't really recommend it, but since it was only a couple of bucks, I'm not mad about it. Thanks for watching. I'm drawing the line at Boxing Wursel. If you don't know that reference, don't worry about it, but it does explain what we're going to see today on the PC Engine files. I'm your host, Mr. MegaManFan, and this is Bullfight, Ring no Haja. But that's not bullfighting, that's boxing, baby. This is professional boxing through the ranks of the Japanese leagues, rising up as an underdog to become the champion of the world. You have 8 different fighters to select from, but unfortunately, there's not going to be much difference in how any of the 8 of them play, because you are controlling the action from the side. Yes, unlike Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, where you can dodge to the left and the right to avoid your opponent's blows and throw uppercuts, combos, knockouts, body shots, you can't do anything here but march forward and march backward. You can occasionally put your hands up to block a shot, but I find that to be terribly ineffective. You can occasionally knock your opponent backward with a well-timed jab, but that seems to happen more rarely than not in my experience. Now, I'm told there is an alternate mode to this game where you go through a vigilante-style beat-em-up mission, acquiring money and equipment along the way, but the boxing is so bad, I can't imagine I would want to do it as a beat-em-up side-scroller either, so I'm not even going to investigate that part, because my feeling is if I can't even win a single boxing match in Bullfight Ring no Haja, what's the point of any of the other modes of this game? And right now, I am getting my ass handed to me by this Hulk Hogan lookalike, complete with golden blonde hair, balding head, and bulging muscles. If he's not supposed to be Hulk Hogan, he's a damn good imitation of him. And presumably, they were basing some of this off the Rocky movie anyway, so I can imagine Thunder Lips would be a very popular choice for a game like this. And there, I get dropped to the canvas for a second time, and this time, no matter how hard I mashed the buttons, I was unable to recover. Now, if you're looking for a copy of Bullfight for your TurboGrafx or PC Engine collection, it is not a super expensive game. You can get a loose hue card for only $9.95 with free shipping. A quote-unquote sealed version can be had for $20, and other various copies go anywhere from $12 to $50, depending on what kind of condition you want it in. But you can get it for as low as $5.59 with $2.80 shipping if you want to wait a month because it had come all the way from Spain. Unless, of course, you live in the European territory, in which case maybe the shipping wouldn't take nearly so long. But either way, if you're playing this game in emulation, you might see that it's not worth it no matter how short nor how long that would take. I don't have a thing against boxing games. I have a thing against bad boxing games. And I'm sorry to compare it to Tyson's Punch-Out because maybe that's too high a bar to set, but it really is the gold standard for all the games before and since. Even Super Punch-Out and Punch-Out on the Wii, there's that feeling that you get that you can actually control what you're doing when you're able to dodge, jab, dodge, uppercut, dodge, body blow, when you can strategically move in multiple directions and throw multiple different kinds of punches, and you can learn to read your opponent's tells for when they're open for a perfect shot. There's no doing that in bullfight. I think this would be better if it was bullfighting. At least then I could be like, Toro, Toro, okay, Toro, and he'd charge and I'd wave the red flag like Bugs Bunny. No, none of that here. At least they are trying to offer some options because not only do you have these 8 different boxers, you also have 8 different managers, and there are even a couple of women in there, which is probably somewhat progressive for the time, but it doesn't seem to matter what your manager is because you're still crippled by having only 2 types of punches, this straight up jab and occasionally a body blow, and then you just get knocked backwards the whole time anyway, so what does it even matter? I think maybe by holding left and pushing one of the buttons, I might be throwing an uppercut. It never lands. I don't know what the point of it is. I only land the jab and the body blow, and that's it. And I can't block for shit. I will admit there's probably a learning curve to this where I could get good at it over time, but it's really telling when you can find one particular move that works, and if you just repeat it ad nauseum, you do better than if you're actually trying. Also, the fact that there's no actual animation of you getting knocked down, and then they just show you down on your face on the canvas is pretty lazy if you ask me. They couldn't even animate you falling over. They put that little effort into it. It seems to me there's probably a good reason Bullfight Ring no Haja is not a super expensive PC Engine game. It's not a highly desirable PC Engine game. And maybe I'm speaking to the one fan out there who really likes this game, but bless you, because I was just happy to knock down my opponent once, and then he gets right back up at 6. I have to struggle to get up barely before the count of 10, and the computer AI is like, nope, getting right off the canvas. And that's where I'm like, yeah, I don't know about this one. I think it's a budget title for a reason, so I am not putting Bullfight Ring no Haja on my recommended list for the PC Engine files, but I do appreciate you being here to watch the video and listen to me talk about Bullfight Ring no Haja. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. I'll see you next time. Hello, Megamaniacs, and welcome back to the PC Engine Files. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe, or if you like this content, subscribe. Either way, leave a thumbs up and your comments on what we're featuring today below. And what we're featuring today is kind of different. And I mean that in every sense of the word. This is Maniac Pro Wrestling for the PC Engine, which seemed to me on the surface of it to be a really good idea because I like pro wrestling games. I really like Fire Pro Wrestling games and any of the derivatives thereof when they get renamed for localization in North America, such as No Mercy 64, one of the most famous examples of that. But this one was completely unknown to me before I saw it in a cheap Japanese eBay auction listing. So I took a chance on it and thought, hey, it's called Maniac Pro Wrestling. How bad can it be? Well, I gotta start by saying it's not quite what you would think it would be from the name of the game. Let me quote from PC Engine Software Bible. Strategic wrestling where you choose your moves from a list when the match is in progress. And I cannot summarize it any better. This is not a game where you get to actually grapple with your opponent. This is like a role-playing game where you have turn-based combat. They attack and you attack. You select an action and they select an action. You cannot grapple your opponent and throw them, suplex them, clothesline them, kick them, punch them, take them out of the ring, throw them into the barricade, throw them into the turnbuckle, throw them into the ring steps, throw them back into the ring, do a flying crossbody and pin them. No, you don't get to do any of that. Everything that you do is predetermined from a list, and when you move your character around the ring and make contact with your opponent, you can select an item from the list. This might not be entirely terrible if you spoke and read and understood everything in Japanese, but since I am not fluent in the written language and only know a few phrases in the spoken language, the language barrier is quite insurmountable here in its unadulterated form without a patch of some kind, especially here at the beginning in what is a very plot-heavy driven introduction. The best I can make of it, and this is strictly a guess, you're a young lion at some Japanese pro wrestling dojo, New Japan, All Japan, Pro Wrestling Noah, whatever the case, and you have the audacity to think you can hang with the grizzled young veterans, and they put a beating on you to teach you some respect and some manners and tell you, if you're serious about being in this dojo, you're going to start at the ground floor and work your way up, literally. Now, they don't make you scrub the floors and cook the meals, which is what a young lion would do in a dojo to show respect to his superiors, but maybe that would have actually been a good addition to this game. Some sort of side quest that you could do to earn respect until you actually get your matches in the ring, because once you actually get in the ring, it is slow, tedious, and uneventful. When I said you get to interact with the wrestler before you use your drop-down list of moves, all you're doing when you interact, quote-unquote, is holding directions on the D-pad until you and your opponent make contact with each other. And there's not even that much space you can move around the ring in because there is a very narrow playfield confined to the middle. So you can move up and down just a little bit, and you can move left and right just a little bit. But as you can see here, there's just not much you can do in that amount of space. There are boxing games that have been designed in a similar way, but at least when you're playing one of those side view boxing games, you're actually throwing punches or blocking punches or ducking punches. You're actually performing the actions yourself. Even though your ability to move around is limited, you are actually fully in control of everything. Here, it's completely random as far as I can tell whether or not you pick a move from the list and that move is going to land or not. You do have status bars on the screen. I'm the one on the left and my opponent's the one on the right. And when you get hit, it's flashing and then it goes down a tick. But even that doesn't seem to be very helpful because during this match, I got my health all the way whittled down to just one left on my status bar. So I started spamming the very first move on the list, which is either a chop or a punch of some kind. I just hit it over and over again and thought, I got nothing left. I might as well go for broke and see what happens, just spamming this move. And somehow, miraculously, I won the match. And it didn't even show me making the pin or getting my hand raised. It just anticlimactically cut to a screen that said, well, it said something in Japanese, that's for sure, but what it said was I was the victor. I don't know the exact verbiage, it just said I'd won. And I moved on, and I went back to the dojo where it gave me a list of options, one of which was to save my progress, which is measured in leg, arm, head, and speed. And apparently you can train up those stats, but I couldn't decipher the menus enough to figure out how to make those stats better. And then I started thinking about that seriously for a minute. Why am I training up those individual stats like this is a role-playing game where I'm increasing my magic and my health and my hit points and my stamina? Why am I doing these things? Oh yeah, that's right. This is basically a wrestling RPG. Because everything is being animated in these cutscenes when you select the down list of moves. And once you select a move, it just happens without you being in control of it. Just like when you select an action in a role-playing game, your character will do the action and you are not controlling them doing the action, they just do it. Well, I suppose there is an audience for this type of pro wrestling game. I'm not it, but I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It's just when it's called pro wrestling, I expect it to actually be doing the pro wrestling myself, not having it be done and animated for me. You know, as I was looking for information about this game, I came across a blog that was called The Clueless Gaijin, and that's how I felt playing Maniac Pro Wrestling. I felt like a clueless gaijin myself. And I would call this game not a pro wrestling game where you are winning by superior grappling and technique and hitting a special move when your power meter is maxed out. I would call this a kickboxing or a boxing game gussied up with a pro wrestling window dressing over the top. Don't let it fool you into thinking that you're actually wrestling. In fact, let me reference the Clueless Gaijin again. He said, it's not even an action game, it's a role-playing game with stats. That's it. That's exactly it. That's what I've been saying to you for all these minutes leading up to this point in the review. It's a role-playing game with stats. It's not quote-unquote pro wrestling at all. But it's called Maniac Pro Wrestling, so it's very misleading. Learn from my mistake and don't seek this out if you're expecting a Fire Pro Wrestling type experience. Even though it was cheap, I mean, you can add it to your library if you're looking for variety or something inexpensive. But if you're doing it because you want a game that, one, is an incredibly fun action game, it's probably not going to fit that bill, and two, easy to understand if you don't read and write Japanese, it's not going to fit that bill either. So this one is an uphill slog in every sense of the word. It's certainly interesting, but I don't think it's for most people like me. But it is inexpensive. Loose copies go for $3-4, round about that ballpark. Complete copies, anywhere from 8 to 10. New copies can still be had for under 20. Yeah, somehow I think this game wasn't even that popular in Japan. Or maybe conversely, the opposite is true. They made so many copies that it now holds little value because everybody had it. It's either one or the other. Like, it's inexpensive because nobody wants it, or it's inexpensive because they made a zillion copies of it and nobody's desperate to get it because it's available everywhere. This is not a rare PC Engine game, and if I'm being honest about it, it's not even that good of a PC Engine game. There are better pro wrestling games on PC Engine. There are better video games on PC Engine. There are much better experiences that you can have for the same or less money, and definitely better experiences that you can have for a little more money. So here's the bottom line on Maniac Pro Wrestling. If you are absolutely bound and determined to play this game no matter what, don't buy it first. Try it in emulation first. Give yourself that luxury of experiencing it before you put down the money. Because even if you bundle it together as an import, as I often talk about doing, you're still going to pay $15 to $20 for shipping no matter how many games you throw in. And if this was the only one that you really wanted out of that whole lot, are you going to be satisfied at the end of the day? Are you going to say, wow, I got all these great games and I got Maniac Pro Wrestling and I got them all for $20 shipped? No, you're probably going to say, wow, I got all these other games that are really cool for $20 shipped, and I also got Maniac Pro Wrestling. It's not going to be the top pick of the litter. It's going to be the bottom dog at the runt of the litter. It's going to be the one that maybe should have been given more care and love to, and somebody will find it a home and treat it well, and it'll grow up to be respected and admired and fiercely loyal to whoever has it. But this puppy ain't for me. I'm Mr. MegaManFan, and this has been the PC Engine Files. And if you like what we do on this channel, please subscribe. I know I mentioned that at the start, but it's good to mention it again at the end. If you like Maniac Pro Wrestling more than I do, hey, feel free to say so. I'm not immune to that kind of commentary. There are some games that I'm probably going to revisit in the future because people have liked them better than I did when I covered them in a video, so I'm always willing to give something a second chance. But quite frankly, I'm pretty sure that even with an English language patch, which would overcome some of the barriers to entry here, I still wouldn't be into a game where all the moves are done for you and you have no real control over the outcome, other than what I can assume is dumb luck. Maybe you pick the right move and it works better than your opponent's move, but I just have no way of knowing, and that's not fun. Thanks, and I'll see you again in another video. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is the PC Engine Files, and today we are looking at Andre Panza's kickboxing. Now, who is Andre Panza, and why should you care? These are good questions to ask, and you should be commended for asking them, because they are the very same questions I was asking myself way back in the day when I first bought this game for my TurboGrafx 16. But being as there were not a lot of TurboGrafx 16 games I could choose from, and it was relatively inexpensive at the time, I picked it up anyway without knowing the first thing about the man. And even today on the internet, there's still not much out there about him. BoxingRecords.com lists him as being 3-1 and a French fighter. Sherdog lists him as 1-0 and having one mixed martial arts fight, assuming they are the same person. Now that makes you wonder, why would they pick an almost completely unknown kickboxer to be the star of their game? I have a theory about that, not one I can prove, but that they just wanted a name. They didn't care if it was a famous name. They just wanted a name they could put next to the title of this game so they could say, endorsed by a real athlete. And obviously, the more obscure the name, the cheaper the license would be. So they literally just pulled a name out of a hat and said, Andre Panza, How would you like to lend your name to a video game? And he said, sure, why not? And took the payday. And if it's any indication of how little they cared about Andre Ponza being the star of this game, he didn't stay the star of the game when it was re-released as a Super CD-ROM game. They just changed the name of it to The Kickboxing, added some Red Book audio to it, and a little bit of an opening introductory video. But aside from that, it's the same game with or without Andre Ponza's endorsement. Even down to the fact that Andre Ponza is still in both versions of the game as an opponent you have to face. One reviewer described it as, well, Andre Ponza is the Mike Tyson of this game. No, this is not Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And I don't just mean because Mike Tyson is more famous or because Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was a better game or even because the game lost that license and eventually just became Punch-Out. Those would all be good things to consider, but no. What I mean is that Mike Tyson's Punch-Out or just Punch-Out is fun. Andre Ponza's Kickboxing, the amount of fun you can have here is very limited. With this side-on combat, you can't really develop any kind of strategy. You can throw roundhouse kicks or low kicks or straight punches or body punches, but you don't get to study your opponent like you do in Punch-Out and find their tells and attack them at strategic times, or save up your power moves and then land one devastating knockout blow. This is just, it could just as easily be a standard boxing game without even being called kickboxing, and standard in the most banal way, which means moving left to right and throwing a strike and either countering your opponent's strike or blocking it. I'm not even sure you're doing any blocking in Andre Ponza's Kickboxing. I think you're just moving left and right and throwing strikes because, quite frankly, I can win a match doing nothing more than that. I can just move forward, throw kicks, and my opponent falls down. And the more times he falls down, the slower he is to get up until eventually he doesn't get up at all. Which shows me that this isn't like standard boxing, kickboxing, or mixed martial arts, because even in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, you would have a technical knockout if you got knocked down too many times and the referee just said, okay, that's it, you're done. But this referee seems more than content for you to savagely knock your opponent down over and over again until he can't stand up anymore, whereas in most real combat sports, a referee would step in and stop it long before it got to that point. Or you would hope they would. Some referees have very famously not done that and let fighters take way more unnecessary blows than they needed to take. Andre Ponza's Kickboxing also suffers from a lack of presentation. And by that I mean there's no crowd noise when you're fighting. There's no music in the background except in the intro. There's really nothing to enhance this game whatsoever. Now again, the Super CD-ROM adds some of those things to it, but is it worth going out of your way to have either version of this game? I don't think so. It's relatively cheap, even by modern PC Engine and TurboGrafx 16 standards. You can get a loose copy for $20, but unless you're just desperate for something to play, I don't think I'd bother. And to add insult to injury, and not injuries suffered while fighting, I couldn't even progress past this point where it allows you to select various strikes. I selected to quit, and the game just froze here, either because there was an emulation error or they just didn't program it to do anything else beyond this point because they never thought people would select that option. I don't know which is true, but I was ready to be done with Andre Ponza's Kickboxing, and I am. Thanks for watching.